Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see so many of you here today for the webinar. We're partnering with our wonderful partner, MZN, again for this one. The webinar is entitled Rethinking Fundraising with AI, and there'll be a mid-year donor trends and strategy update from the guys at MZN. The webinar is 1 hour long, and there'll be good time for Q&A at the end. So any questions you have, just pop them in the Q&A box. It will be recorded and we will be sending slides around at the end. Okay, so don't worry about taking notes. We'll get these slides over to you guys. I'm going to hand over to the team at MZN now. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the webinar.
Thank you so much, Ollie. Welcome, everyone. Thanks again for joining us. I think it would be best for us to start with a round of introductions just for the MZN team in case you haven't met any of us before. So very quickly, I'm Tony Robinson Beck. I'm a consultant at MZN International, and I will be taking you through the key donor trends for this half of 2025. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. And my name is Christian Mason-Natrup. I am the Managing Director and founder of MZN International, and I will be talking about our AI use in making your BD team and the finance team a bit more operationally and better towards the second half of this webinar. Ollie, I think we need the next slide. And there we go. So I may as well start with the introduction before Tony and we take us into the donor update. Many of you would have known MZN. We've been around for a long time, 2011 right now. MZN continues to be a social enterprise where most of our services are subsidized, of course. And our mission is to build better NGOs and to build more impact organizations. We have acquired a for-profit Human Planet subsidiary organization focusing on impact investment earlier this year. As the market moves towards impact investment and blended finance, that is not the focus of today's webinar, but it has been one of before. At MZN, we remain focused on the not-for-profit and the impact organization, providing training, advisory, and now obviously AI tools, particular focus on the small and medium-sized organizations, so that we can continue the localization drive and manage the funding crisis and the technology opportunities at the same time. I think with that, Tony, and it's back to you in the next slide, Ollie.
Yes. Thank you so much, Chris. So in today's webinar, we want to take you a bit through some shifts and changes that we see in the donor and investor landscape. I think it's important to introduce the concept of NGOs looking towards what investors are looking for, seeing as we've had so many shifts and changes in the market ever since the beginning of the year. So we'll be taking a look through what the rest of 2025 will look like. We'll also touch base a little bit on how AI is being used, not just for rudimentary tasks, but how to incorporate it a bit better into your overall business operations to just strengthen and optimize the things that you can do without, and how to strengthen your overall strategy to engage donors and investors. So by the end of the session, we want you to have an understanding of key donor/investor trends, understanding how you can pivot and how your NGO can pivot in this ever-changing landscape, and then looking at how AI can be used more strategically. Next slide, please. Next slide. Thank you. All right, so we're starting first with the European Union. Like USAID, I think it's important to stress here that the EU is moving slowly but surely towards using its rather limited funding to raise more private capital. So you should expect for more EU programming to be less grants-based and more impact investments based in the future. On the slide here, you will see the mentioning of a EU budget for 2028 to 2034. And this is looking towards uniting various EU funds, increasing coordination across member states and regions, and ensuring that there's a coherent strategy across the member state, but also how these member states individually disperse their funding. There is I would say, greater emphasis on championing education and democratic values. When I go through a lot of the EU funding opportunities, I see a lot of democratic, civic engagement-based, youth civic engagement-based opportunities that are geared more globally. And they're trying to increase investment in areas such as education, civic engagement, empowering youth, empowering students, and citizens overall. When it comes to education, they're looking at strengthening the Erasmus Plus program, and they want to have it centralized as a union of skills. So it's supporting education mobility, solidarity, and overall inclusiveness. This new budget is also looking to bolster initiatives such as the Agora EU program, similar to what I mentioned before, is trying to promote more democratic values, equality, inclusiveness, etc. And the core principles are that even though these are more geared towards a global framework, they're also very important to the EU as a bloc. So you will see a lot through the slide decks here that there is a little bit of an emphasis on championing initiatives and projects and overall programmatic areas that also coincide with what the EU wants for its own self. There is also a competitiveness fund that seeks to maximize the impact of every euro by leveraging private investments, which I mentioned before. And it's working in close collaboration with Horizon Europe, which is a EU programmatic funding area that looks at research and innovation. So overall, they want to support projects, startups, nascent ideas that they think will have a great impact, and they want to have that level of involvement where they can take it from conception to market. And overall, just reduce their administrative burden, so to speak, and foster technological independence, mainly for the EU, but also globally. Next slide, please. Okay, so we also see that the EU is spending quite a bit on defense, security, and migration. So the same budget also significantly increases resources for military mobility, cybersecurity, and border protection. In fact, there is allotted approximately 34 billion euros for civilian and military infrastructure, as well as fostering a robust migration system throughout the entire regional bloc. There's also still going to be quite a focus on providing support for Ukraine. So even in the event that the war comes to an end, there's still systems in place to provide that level of support for the country when it comes to providing protection for the peace and protection to stave off further possibilities of conflict. The Global Europe Instrument, this seeks to usher in a new dual objective. So it's starting to foster those partnerships that contribute simultaneously towards the sustainable development of both partner countries as well as the strategic interests of the Union. And this is something that I'm repeating because I've seen it so many times when I read the funding opportunities, when I read their programmatic, their new programmatic material, budgets, etc. They want to be able to kill two birds with one stone. So their priority is the EU, and any other initiatives globally that complement that will have priority. So what does this mean for NGOs in practice? Obviously, you have to do a little bit of combing through to see how best your interventions, your programs, etc., can align with what the EU plans to do or wants to do. And aside from that, you want to also step up your compliance to not only their programmatic outlooks, but also what they require from you in terms of ensuring that you have solid financials, auditing, safeguarding in terms of making sure that the programs and interventions that you have in place protect the persons that you're working with, communities, vulnerable people, and just ensuring that you have a level of, I would say, familiarity with their systems. So when you're dealing with the tedious level of paperwork that an EU application requires, you're not overwhelmed. Make sure to build your consortia early, ensuring that there's complementarity across all partners, and that all partners have a strong track record that also takes into consideration some of the points that I mentioned before, such as safeguarding, environmental protection, etc., etc. Where possible, try to have investable components in your overall programmatic outreach, your interventions, because as we mentioned before, they're looking for things like this. So try to have things such as outcome frameworks, have a revenue logic, and try to see if you can introduce bit by bit until you're a little bit more comfortable with it, elements of catalytic finance overall. Next slide, please. Okay, so now we're at the United Kingdom. So I'm sure we all know that earlier this year there was a overall reduction in FCDO's budget, bringing it to the lowest it's been for over 2 decades. So we're seeing cuts in areas such as research and development, and the removal of the FCDO as a spender of last resort. That being said, we have seen some trends where the organization is prioritizing some things over others. So for example, we saw that multi-country support brought in more than half of the funding, or received more than half of the funding between late last year and this year. And we also see that there are some areas which have received the bulk of the funding. So things such as agriculture, governance, health and gender, etc. That being said, we've also seen that most of the development contractors who have received funding from the UK have been private development companies. So you're seeing this trend again of these donors kind of prioritizing interventions or contractors who are a little bit closer to home. So just to keep this in mind as you are doing your outreach and making your plans. Next slide, please. Okay, so now we come to the current largest donor. And just a little bit of a caveat here, when you see AA, it's just the Federal Foreign Office. AA is the acronym in German. Okay, so let's begin. So the Foreign Office's budget for humanitarian aid is also set to be cut by about a half for the next year. Overall, German funding is scarce. The availability of direct grant funding from both the BMZ and the Foreign Office is decreasing. So you will see that there will be quite a bit of competition for fewer, but it could be possible that there are larger funding opportunities as we go along. So due to this reduction in grant funding, we're seeing that there's kind of been a shift towards KfW loan-based operations and blended structures funding. And this is just how they are kind of making this shift towards non-grant based funding. So they're trying to introduce a lot of loans, fiscal capacity, etc., as they try to deviate from this. GIZ, in addition, is seeing a volume decrease, sorry. after a relatively flat 2024. So again, there's going to be increased competition for a variety of funding from this particular organization. And I've seen that firsthand in 2024, whereas I could, count on my GIZ network to, show me what's being funded or who I can speak to for a particular client of ours. Now I'm getting less and less responses. Okay, so how do NGOs navigate this very harsh climate? Similar to the EU, you also have to prioritize strong financial controls. I know the Germans are a little bit notorious for their very stringent and strict reporting and compliance measures, but now you don't really have a choice. You have to comply as best as possible to even be in the running to secure these very limited funds. Try to have robust internal controls, try to be as transparent with your accounting, make sure you have clear audit trails just to prove that you are trustworthy and efficient and responsible when you're using donor funding. Ensure that you have your safeguards in place. Make sure that you are demonstrating your expertise with environmental climate-based projects, because Germany is still placing quite a bit of emphasis on climate action. So in the event that this is something that you are already focused on or thinking to focus on, just make sure that it's being done in a way that shows responsibility to the environment as well as to the communities that you're working with. And overall, just try to fit within EU guidelines when you are going for funding from the Germans. Just make sure that you are following as much as possible EU guidelines, because as I said before, they're trying to make everything cohesive across all member states. So there's a high possibility that you might be required to do a little bit more as you go forward. Next slide, please. Okay, so we are at foundations. So the foundations have stepped up quite a bit to try and play their part in covering the gap that's been left by USAID. Unfortunately, they can't fully replicate the scale at which USAID was providing financial support throughout the landscape. But we've seen some great strides. I mean, everybody knows about, Gates Foundation and their commitment for the next 20 years to disperse about 200 billion. But it's important to contextualize this support in terms of it won't be around forever. I mean, for example, Gates Foundation, once they've reached 2045, and once they've made this 200 billion disbursement, that's it. There will be no additional disbursements, and there probably will be, a gap left by that as well. But this is, of course, dependent on how we get ourselves in a position where we're ready to not be as dependent on grant funding by then, hopefully. MacArthur Foundation, we see that it's, increased its giving to about 6%. And there has been also a growth in collective giving and giving circles. So there's a rise in trust-based philanthropy with unrestricted multi-year grant shift towards strategic, value-driven funding and capacity building. It's important to note as well that there is a ever-blending boundary between philanthropy and impact investing or catalytic finance. Even foundations are seeking both social and financial return in their giving. These business practices are converging, potentially redefining the expectations of donors. So even though they're plugging the gap, even though now they've tried to step up as best as possible, like I said before, it probably won't last forever. So just get yourselves as ready as possible to deal with the coming shifts. Yeah. How can NGOs leverage? So try to target impact-aligned capital and high net worth donors. This is a matter of dealing with the discomfort of doing things in a very different way. I can speak for myself. Chris, at the beginning of the session, mentioned that we recently merged with Human Planet, and so we have to, even at MZN, do daily learning, different ways of doing things, and how we kind of make that jump from traditional grant giving to impact investing. So just give yourselves a little grace, take your time, try to introduce it a little bit incrementally in how you're structuring your projects, your programs, and your overall outreach. And yeah, just try to be as resilient as possible because it's changing rapidly and it will probably continue to do so for the foreseeable future. Next, we have offer flexible funding models and, oh, can you go back a bit? Sorry. So next is offer flexible funding models and reduce reporting burdens. So when you are engaging with these donors, these foundations, try to show them a bit that you have that knowledge that they're looking for, that outcome-based, having something to give in return to the donor rhetoric that I'm sure they're looking for. And then try to use match funding and collective platforms to expand your reach, delve within your networks, try to see if you can pull together, try to see if you can bring together different organizations to have that level of complementarity that would kind of overcome some of the challenges that we're seeing in the sector. And now we can move on. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you very much, Tony Ann. On the GIZ side, you're absolutely right that GIZ grants are reducing again, just in line with everything you've said, Tony Ann. Absolutely correct. I had a word yesterday. I was in Frankfurt last night with the GIZ, amongst others, and their international services division, which is their private sector division. That, however, is increasing. They're having actually budget increases of 20% or so. So exactly in line with what you're saying, the grant model is going out and the private finance and blended finance world is coming in.
Yeah.
So just let you know that even within GIZ, they see the same trends, basically. Good. So let's talk. We've talked about blended finance before. This is not a blended finance webinar. If you are interested in innovative finance, into impact investments, into outcome-based finance mechanisms, basically a way of getting, thanks for the audio confirmation, by the way, a way of getting more private capital into our missions, then please reach out to my colleagues at Human Planet or to Tony Ann, myself, and we'll connect you and we'll help you navigate this shift. I think NGOs these days, I've been working in the NGO sector since 2007. I'm getting old. But I think we have this perfect storm between a completely revolutionizing business model from grants away towards other forms, private finance. And then we have the technological revolution, which brings its own perils and promises with it. So we're trying to briefly mention both here, and then we get to the questions hopefully as fast as possible. Suffice to say that the blended finance landscape, I'm not going to go through everything that's on the slide here, is rising sharply. So GIZ International Services, we just heard about 20% budget increase. KfW Capital, again, the private arm of KfW in Germany, also a 20% increase. And you can see that GIN, the Global Alliance on Impact Investment, was seen a 21 year-on-year increase in it as well. So all around 20% increase. That's the great news. The bad news is that it requires not your programs team, but certainly your business development team and your finance team, as Tony Ann mentioned, to be adapting to a lot of changes. So I think the biggest rule here is to take care of each other as we navigate this perfect storm of two massive changes, technological and a change in the business level. I think we can move over to the next one because we have a lot to discuss. That's enough on that. The if there are organizations here that still want to grow, that see that the need that they are serving is not diminishing, and if you still have it in you to grow, then first of all, a big applause. Secondly, here are sort of 5 tips where I would focus on. Number 1, make sure the program is replicable and scalable. So less one-off programs, and after that is the exit route is just to get another grant or so. Investment is tracked to programs that are scalable / replicable in other areas. So we have a great organization right now that does, for example, clinics in a box in underserved health markets in East Africa, and that clinic in a box. That's a fantastic example of a scalable program, because you can put these clinics in a box theoretically everywhere, to be honest. They are heavily AI assisted. They are heavily localized, and you can do this in Kenya, but you can also do it in Asia, frankly. So that's this type of programming, frontline services, that is inherently replicable and scalable, that does receive some grant funding, but also receives 80-90% now of investment funding. I spoke to the initiator of that initiative here in Frankfurt last night. That was really amazing. Secondly, on the second one, the business development for an NGO then changes from replying to an RFP or a TOR to let's design a program and sell it. And as simple as this sounds, the more difficult it is to actually make that happen. Getting into the mindset of designing a program and then positioning it towards donors, positioning it towards the impact investment community that is rising so sharply, positioning it towards people like Human Planet is a change in the system. So you can't ask the question, what does the donor want? The question is, what solution do you offer, and what solution can you convince other ones to fund? And that is a change in the mindset that is easier said than done, particularly for organizations that have came of age in the grant world. There is, however, considerable potential for growth and programs that are longer term. The fundamental challenge of grant-based programming was always that the grant runs out after 3, 4, 5 years, and the program should reasonably continue. Now, with this mixed funding world that we are in right now, that means we can change the funding and the program can continue. It hopefully avoids the brain drain of NGOs all the time. It allows those clinics, for example, to theoretically run for 20, 30, 40, 50 years until frontline health is actually good, rather than trying to compress a complex long-term problem into a GIZ or USAID, former USAID program template of 4 years. So I know that has been the critique of many years, and there's also a chance in here of finally fixing that. And as I said, finance and business development teams are the ones that need to change most. So if you're leading an organization, if you are on the board of an organization, take care of these people. They really are in the repairing the ship or changing the ship while sailing it, or rebuilding the organization under fire, as we say. Moving over to the red side of this slide, the imminent challenges, therefore, are clear. Invest into your business development team to manage the change from grants to innovative finance. They need training, they need AI tools, they need connections. We're here to help. Our services are probably more affordable than you think. Our new AI services are incredibly affordable. We are purposely building them to be as far adaptable, even by organizations with little resources. So avail yourself of these resources. We're going to talk about the first batch of AI agents we have launched in this effort to assist you in a minute. So I'll park the second bullet point here on the right. And then one more time, this is a critical moment yet again for impacted organizations, including NGOs. If we are not rebuilding our business model, if we are not taking care of the people who do this in your business development team, in your board, etc., then the organization is likely to stagnate or even experience more financial distress. So I think rule number one is to be kind and take care of each other. Right, let's move on to the next. Here's the 4 things then that on a strategic high level, before we move into the operating level, I would summarize the current challenges are diversify your funding sources. So if you only have UK grants, diversify into the EU. We've done that a lot of fantastic UK organizations over the last 3 years. And then from this space, diverse into the blended finance, innovative finance, impact investment world. You basically need various amounts of income. Sorry, that's an announcement. I hope you can still hear me.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you for the information. So evolving your business model from a shift to the grant dependency to a more adaptable model. That is harder to do than it's said. You basically need the ability to, yes, receive and administer a grant, but also administer and report against an investment and repay that. You also need to have various forms of blended capital. Now, you don't need to become financial experts. That's what we're here for. We can structure that with you. But you do need to administer the funds. So that makes your business model more complex. Then we have AI, written in a recent article on the promises and perils of AI. AI is at this wonderful point where it can really leverage, make it really much more efficient about what we do. The problem is, if we are not doing the right thing, it's basically really efficient of doing the wrong thing. So we need to be very intentional about how and where we leverage AI in our operations. More on that later. And then good old partnership building. I think organizations like Bond are fantastic at opening the doors to interesting conversations. Use them more. I'm very pleased to have partnered with Bond for many years now. We can also connect you to other organizations. We work with around 300 NGOs and impact organizations every year. And I think, Sonia, and half the time we're just forwarding the email people to read, right? I mean, that's it feels like a dating service sometimes.
Yeah.
Right, let's move on to the next. I don't know what that is there. Right. So in last year, ChatGPT came up, and then that was interesting. The fastest adopted technology in human history, AI. The more interesting fact happened earlier this year with agentic AI. And if you don't know already, agentic AI is different from general purpose AI or general AI because it can basically learn a special task. So, for example, if you teach it to write a certain proposal in your tone, with your history, it keeps referring to your corrections, it keeps referring to your documents, referring to your past reviews. We're currently designing an AI agent for an African organization, and we're uploading, Tony, and remind me, hundreds of project reports to teach that AI, basically. And then it gets better very fast. And it can write proposals for you. Same thing with opportunity identification, same thing with admin tasks. We look at this a little later. Can we move on to the next slide? So we find more time to... Adopting AI in your operations is not so much a question of should you do it. It's more of a question of how to do it. If your business operating plan, if your business plan does not have an AI component, I really would love to see that business plan. There wouldn't be a very good reason. What it basically allows you right now is to boost your fundraising and your business development in a structured, really collaborative process without more manual labor. So without increasing your head costs or your staffing costs massively. And that's just as well. So that's the good news that this tool has become available just at a time when your business model is becoming more complex. So we are usually, there's no cookie cutter approach, but we usually sort of go through 4 phases when we implement AI agents for our partners. We do a kickoff workshop, we validate, we ask ourselves what we want to do. We look at the current resource mobilization process in the organization. Then we identify in phase C or phase B where AI can make the biggest efficiency gain. And then we design the agents with our AI engineers. Yes, we do have now a lot of AI engineers. I never see that coming as well. And then we do beta testing and rollout. So it's a pretty straightforward process and technology delivery process. As usual, we work on that extremely collaboratively, doing no feedback and back and forth. And I'm very pleased to say that the agents, which we have officially launched for the general public just yesterday, have also been developed with a fantastic community of 300 or so people who over the last 4 months helped us design these agents from all over the world. It's been a fantastic collaborative process based on WhatsApp groups and email groups and joint coding. If you are one of the people who have participated in either of these groups, then I really want to thank you for all the input you've given us in the last 120, 130 days. That has been really useful, and I hope the result is one that is really, really useful to you. Good. Can we move on to the next then? All right. Okay. So I think this is where, Ollie, this is where you stopped. So give me 1 second. Oh yeah, a bit of a cold. Okay. So let's have a quick look at these AI agents. Give me 1 second to find the right window that I want to share with you. Not my diary, but this here. There we go. Okay. I would happily invite you all to go to this newly launched site, live since yesterday, in development for 4 months right now, ai.mzninternational.com. It's not just for humanitarian organizations, by the way. We should probably change the wording. You can join the development community if you are so inclined here, and you can now start using the first agents here. By the way, can I get a quick confirmation? Am I sharing my screen all right? Yeah, thank you very much, Tony. Okay, so there's a little intro video here. You will see that there are 4 categories of agents. 6 focus on fundraising, 3 focus on communications, and 2 focus on impact reporting, or M&E. And there's 2 more coming with research on admin capacity coming very soon. So if you look at these fundraising ones, for example, you have these 6 agents ranging from giving you a strategy about which donors active in which sector and which country, down to writing a proposal for you, where you can get assistant, upload your past proposals, and our grant writer, we call it David, will be able to write the grant to a decent standard. Not you still need to do some manual work, but it probably saves you hours and hours of work. Very interested. Most people are interested in the grant opportunity scanner. That is basically your United Nations marketplace, your DevEx, your development aid. I'm going to show that to you in a second, where you can scan for opportunities. You can get the agent to email you suitable opportunities as well. And obviously, as we continue to have the user base increasing, the agent will get better and better. I'm really impressed that we've only launched yesterday, and so far over 100 people have started, 100 organizations have started using the AI agents. So we're off to a strong start here. There's also interesting other ones, but I'm going to dive into one of them in the interest of time, the grant opportunity scanner. This is we call it a Sarah. This is where you identify opportunities, you can filter them, and you can manage your deadlines so you don't miss that all important bit. And if we go in, you'll see a pretty simple form. I'm just going to select a random sector. So say let's water and sanitation, and let's see what it comes up with. And it finds 22 active grants. These are all grants right now. They are not tenders. So at the moment, you are really focused on grants and opportunities from the wildlife habitats in Canada, which I've never heard of personally, to the Charles Hayward Foundation in the UK. Also the UK ones, there we go, a Glasgow Local Environment Fund that was updated on the 29th of August. And then obviously the large European commissions, you see that it's due in 14 days. Down to the local one. So this is able to find you. You can also get it bookmark them and get them to email to you. You can select by geography if you don't want to work in the UK, but you want to work in any of these geographies, countries, or even by individual donors. And I think there's like 300 donors here or so. So if you want to search for them in particular, you find them. We believe, comparing it to other donor databases, that this right now at least is the most comprehensive donor search on the market. And before I get the question, we have, of course, made a price. There is a free version here that allows you to just try things out. And then we've managed to bring the price down to $49 US dollar for that. And obviously a larger one for with personal assistance and monthly coaching for just under 100. That you can sign up to on a monthly basis. And here is your comparison. We hope that's really helping you. We hope our strategy is that this puts a lot of business development and proposal writing and opportunity finding power into the hands of localized organizations. And that is our intention here. And as the user base goes up, we will actually lower the price because again, we are a non-profit. Yeah, so we just need to cover our costs. Great. I think then that's nearly the end. Our training team, Nicole, wanted me to mention 3 or 4 training courses, and then we can go over to the question and answers. Yes, the Istanbul course takes place very much. So in about just over a month's time, we have the project management reporting course in Istanbul. It's about half full right now. I think there are places available. We have the very popular Impact Investment and Innovative Finance Masterclass, which is a single day in Berlin on the 13th of November. I will facilitate that myself together with my colleague Juliet. And I would it would be fantastic if you joined there. If you want to know more about impact investment and you can spare a single day in Berlin, by all means. Berlin also has a new airport, so it should be able to fly over quite easily. The 2 days beforehand, then there is also a course on writing winning proposals. You can combine these 2 courses. And then later in November is again a focus on budgets, again in Berlin. So a lot of things happening in Berlin over the winter. And I apologize in advance for the weather in Berlin that will no doubt be just the same as here in Hamburg, rainy. Good. I think we are through. Is that right? Yeah. Thank you very much. Stay in touch and let's get to the questions. Ollie, if you could help me with the questions, if there are any questions, then that would be great.
Hi guys, the first one we've got, oh, your mic was muffled, but I think it's okay now. So the opportunity agent sounds incredibly helpful. How is it different to searchable engines such as Devix, etc.? Does it use these sources to identify grants?
Yes. So it scrapes. Thank you. I can take this. It scrapes off the information of the foundations and donors of over I think 3,500 individual sources. So the big UN down to the obscure little foundation. Devix is focused on tenders. We are focused on grants. That's the first bigger difference, and it includes all the smaller foundations as well that you wouldn't find on Devix. Secondly, it's cheaper, and thirdly, it's you're able to transport your grant you found, and this is where the real power lies. So say that you found a grant that you want to apply for from foundation or donor XYZ, you can then upload your program design that you've written in a Word document, say, and get the next AI agent to write you a proposal for it. And that is, I think, is a significant difference, Ollie, as you can imagine. Ollie, I think we can stop screen sharing, by the way. That is a big difference. Because you can not just find the bits, but you can then immediately write a application for them or write an M&E scheme for them. And you can then get that submission done much faster. And I think that is a major advantage.
think that was the only question we've got. Rose asked a question about how we join the community, but then she found it, so that's okay. If anyone has any questions post-webinar, then please feel free to email Tony Ann or Bond, and we can forward them on. But it's been a really informative, interesting webinar, again, from you guys, so thank you for that.
Great. I'm glad there are not that many questions. Fantastic. I hope you found it useful, ladies and gentlemen. Do reach out to us on the donor updates, on the AI, on the blended finance stuff. Hopefully see you in Berlin or Istanbul at some point. And until then, we're here for you as always, and I look forward to continue working with each other.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.